This story requires some background. When I was in junior college, in about 1987, I moved into the house of a childhood friend. We both worked in the campus computer lab, but because of a couple of family tragedies, Edgar lived in the house all alone. Less than 5 years before, Edgar lived with his father, his mother, and his brother in the 2,100 square foot house. But in 1982, his brother died of asphyxiation due to the common cold. He was able to get up out of bed and almost get to the door and open it, but his larynx had closed and he suffocated, and nobody knew until the following morning. Then in 1985, Edgar's mother was murdered in a case that was eventually presented a decade later on Cold Case Files, the TV series. But the TV series is not part of my story. So Edgar's dad moved out of state about 6 months before, and he rarely visited. I moved into Edgar's brother's old room, and I didn't really give it much thought. It was a 2-story house with bedrooms on the second floor. Downstairs was a pair of living rooms, a kitchen, a bathroom, a garage. My room was the first bedroom at the top of the stairs, and as I stepped out of it into the hallway, I could see down the stairway. Edgar had 2 elderly cats, Samantha and Sebastian. Their age made them very personable and remarkably quiet. They already knew who I was before I moved in, so there was no breaking in period. They were very enjoyable cats. This was fairly insignificant, but was an indicator of things to come. One night I brought home Taco Bell for dinner, and Edgar and I sat down on the couch, and then we both went looking for the TV remote and couldn't find it. It was a sectional couch, and it wasn't uncommon for the remote to fall down between cushions, so we took it all apart, moved the sectionals away from the wall, but couldn't find the remote. With dinner getting cold, we reassembled the couch, and Edgar slammed in a VHS tape and turned on the TV manually. We had dinner, and after that, we decided to go to Tower Books over by Sunrise Mall. We returned several hours later. To our surprise, there, on the edge of the couch, was the remote control. I asked Edgar if his father had been visiting, and he said not that I know of. I suggested he call, and he did. His father answered the phone in his Nevada home. He said he hadn't been in Sacramento for weeks. We had the remote back, but we couldn't explain it. Edgar was going out, and I was going to bed. He had some boxes to bring in from his car, which amounted to books from his old girlfriend's apartment, and he said he'd be done shortly, then go hang out with a high school friend of ours who worked down at the 7-Eleven around the corner. I went up, closed my bedroom door, heard his banging around, front door opening, slamming, boxes being dropped. I planned on reading until the noise stopped. And eventually, the front door slammed, and it got quiet. I started to think about sleep, and then the music started. The front door opened again with a bang, so I kept on reading. I think the music went on, as did the banging and dropping of boxes, for a good 40 minutes. But it got silent again, and then I heard one more slamming of the front door. I was not exactly happy about losing another hour of sleep over this, so I opened the door and was going to trudge down and ask for some silence. After all, I had a big day ahead of me tomorrow. I opened the bedroom door, and it was completely dark out in the hall as I looked down the stairs, and completely silent. I stepped into the hall and flicked on the light switch, and a face with great big eyes was staring back up at me from the bottom of the stairs. It was Edgar. I nervously crossed my arms and asked, "When are you going to finish?" He informed me that he'd been gone for an hour, and wondered why the music was up so loud when he'd come up to the door. As soon as he'd opened the door, said Edgar, the music stopped. He thought I was the one with the music playing, making the noise. So we searched the house, top to bottom, and there was nobody else, just us. Edgar joked that it was probably the cats. I was not present for this, but it happened during Thanksgiving break. Edgar's girlfriend was traveling internationally for a few weeks to see her family, and I was off with my family as well. Edgar was catching up on homework, and he often did this while lounging on the couch. The cats were asleep right next to him. Suddenly, both cats woke up and stared through the opening into the second living room. Edgar looked to see what they were looking at, and from around the corner, from where the base of the stairs led into the second living room, a shimmering shape came floating in. Edgar said it looked like a blurry person, shiny, floating around the corner, and came up to the arch that separated the two living rooms. And whatever it was, it left Edgar with a distinct impression that it was surprised to see him there. The shimmering shape stopped at the arch, paused for a moment, and then quickly retreated along its original path. He never saw that again. I'd been living in the house for about 6 months. School was well into the fall semester, and Christmas break was a few days away. Edgar was staying at his girlfriend's house, so I had the house to myself. I'd already been asleep a few hours when the call of nature woke me up. I noted that the alarm said it was 3:30 a.m. I visited the facility across the hall, completed the task, jiggled the handle, and I felt the house shake, maybe like a 3.7 earthquake, which is not really uncommon for California. I stood waiting to see if the shaking would get worse, but it ended. I was about to step back toward the room, and the shake repeated, but this time it ended with a boom, like a big box had dropped downstairs. And a moment later, the shaking happened again. This time it was followed by a low moan coming up through the floor, like maybe originating in the kitchen down below. I kind of stood stuck in place. Then I heard a shuffling sound, like maybe that same box that was dropped earlier was pushed along, picked up, and dropped again, and there was more shaking. This is followed by a louder moan, but this time it had moved. Now it was directly beneath me, as if it had gone from the kitchen to the first living room and to the arch that separated the two living rooms. It was coming toward the stairs. I quick-stepped to my bedroom, and as I closed and locked the door, I heard the moan, louder than ever, but this time it had changed. It finished more like an angry cry, and then there was more booming, and then footsteps like exaggerated boots pounding on the floor. I backed up to the furthest wall and picked up my trusty baseball bat and stared at the door. There was an ear-piercing, horrible scream, and like stomping of boots coming up the stairs. It wasn't fast, but you could really feel this. They got right up to the top of the stairs, stopped for a moment, and it was silent. A couple of more booms of footsteps, and it was right at my door. Then there was a terrific impact on the door, and what sounded like a vengeful sounding scream. The door visibly moved like somebody was trying to strong-arm it open. The handle shook rapidly back and forth, but the lock held. There was another blood-curdling scream, and something pushed on the door so hard that the middle of the door actually bent slightly inward. I think I heard like cracking sounds. I'm not going to claim I was brave. I didn't mess my shorts or anything like that, but I vaguely remember begging for the thing to stop, to go away. And I think I even said the Lord's Prayer, but boom went the door again, followed by a groaning yell. But instead of at the height that it was before, when it sounded like somebody right on the other side of the door, this time it sounded like it was coming from the top of the door, like it was going into the attic. I waited breathlessly, fighting with sleep in my eyes, and there was another impact that was gonna come. I knew it, but it had ended. The house went silent. There were no more noises. I'm not sure how long I stood there, but I recall being motionless until the sun began to show in the window. And when that happened, I grabbed as much important stuff as I could get in my arms, including the baseball bat, and I opened the door, and I went straight down to my car, started the engine, and took off. I called in to work sick that day, but I rented an apartment in Roseville at the first place that I could find on such short notice. Before the sun set, I came back and emptied my bedroom from Edgar's house, and I never went back into the house even for a visit. Edgar's father sold the place not long after, and that ended the story. It's been difficult to draw conclusions from these events. I can't explain them. Back when they happened, they seemed very real. But 26 years later, since I've never had a recurrence of this kind of experience, it's hard to say. I've revisited the memory over and over, trying to find a rational explanation, but I've never come up with one. I can't shake the memory, but since I never actually saw anything and no damage was done, can I have simply experienced a home invasion where those who were invading had a very strange sense of humor? Well, that might have happened, and it certainly is a better explanation than the boogeyman. Anyway, I suppose I have to just chalk all this up to the great unknown.